Hi, I'm Rob Hughes, Head of Wireless Marketing at 1Finity, and we're here in Barcelona for Mobile World Congress. It's day 3, and I'm fortunate to be joined by Joe Madden, who is Principal Analyst from Mobile Experts.
Yes.
Welcome, Joe. Thanks very much.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for having me.
So, Joe, you've probably got way too many steps on your Fitbit, wandering the halls, learning about the latest things that are going on, talking to vendors and operators alike. What's your impression of the show so far, and what are you seeing out there?
Well, the show's great for me. There's people are showing really new and interesting things. The convergence of AI with the RAN is interesting to me. Not so much about Gen AI and large language models and that sort of thing, but the use of AI to enhance the RAN, I think, is having really interesting impact. And so that's one of the most interesting things going on this week.
Excellent. And what are you finding about Open RAN? What are there have been some that have been throwing around a little bit of uncertainty and doubt about Open RAN. What are you finding here on the floor?
Yeah, the reports of Open RAN being dead were really not, I think, out of line. And, I don't see it that way at all. In fact, I've been predicting for years that Open RAN would settle into a kind of a comfortable position where, you don't have 13 different pieces that are all interchangeable on open interfaces, but you have a few pieces that are the major pieces that really help the operators to get what they need. And that's what's happening. And we have most of the top 20 operators in the world now with plans to deploy commercial Open RAN hardware, Open Radio hardware, and some of them are well underway now, as you know.
Yeah.
And many others are coming. And so the way I see it is, maybe the train left the station already on 5G. So, Open RAN was a little late getting to market for the initial 5G wave. But we're now in the extension phase of 5G, and we see almost all of the top operators using a second tier of vendors to come in and fill some of the problems that they have, to take care of specialty cases that the main vendors weren't really supporting.
Right.
And so that's going extremely well for these operators. And I think what they're finding is that they're getting what they want, and the integration is getting easier all the time.
Yes.
And now when new spectrum comes to the market, I fully expect that all of those deployments are going to be Open RAN from the very beginning.
Right. So you talked about looking for specific products to fill in specific gaps or whatever they need. As people are moving more into sort of the densification side of 5G, what are the kinds of innovations that you're seeing vendors and the industry looking for in densification?
Right. Well, I think some of it is multi-band radios or things like that. That's been very successful because, vendors putting unique bands together, that's something, that the big vendors have trouble with making many different combinations, and they don't like to support one operator with a unique combination of bands.
Sure.
So that's a simple one. And that's happened a lot in the lower bands with the FDD radios. But now the Open RAN vendors are moving up to massive MIMO radios, like you're showing here.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the combinations of those with FDD bands and other things is going to be, I think, another useful customization that's needed.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's turn our attention to AI RAN. Over the past couple of years, there's been a lot of hype around AI RAN. What are you seeing in terms of the pieces that are more vision, still forward-looking, or coming down the road, versus things that are available here and now that operators can start taking advantage of today?
Yeah, that's right. AI RAN is a very broad term, and people think about large language models and really grand things, but there are some very, down-to-earth, real things that are happening, in fact, today. And so, for example, I would start with AI4 RAN,
right?
And enhancing capacity in the RAN, energy efficiency in the RAN. Some of those things are happening in a few operators commercially today in the field. So the RAN is one of the earliest use cases of AI applications out in our network.
Sure.
And that's gonna grow over time. I think those algorithms are going to get more complex, and we're going to see more and more capacity benefits and so on in the RAN. Okay, then we can turn to some simple applications. Simple automation.
Right.
I'm a real fan of physical automation in terms of the impact on the mobile networks, whether that's in a private 5G setting on premises or out in the field. I think physical automation is a combination of, requiring things that are moving, so they have to be wireless, first of all, and things that are moving, so they need the low latency for control and safety purposes and so on.
Yep.
And then, these robots and drones and manufacturing centers and so on. These are enterprise cases where the customer is willing to pay a premium.
Exactly.
As opposed to consumers that just want the cheapest price.
Right.
Okay. And so I think the combination of being wireless, being low latency, and customers that are willing to pay, that gives us an ROI to move with and to start to implement some of these things. So it'll start with simple applications in factories and things. As far as humanoid robots walking the streets, I don't think that's going to happen this year. But, we'll have more and more of that, with drones or maybe those food delivery robots or different things as they get more sophisticated and the models get smarter and smarter. They don't want to have the whole model living on that little robot.
That's right. That's right.
So they're going to need to put some of that intelligence in the edge. And over time, that distributed edge computing model is going to get more sophisticated, and the network is going to need to support more and more traffic going back and forth. So there will be an impact on how the network evolves over time with more complexity.
Yeah, you talked about the low latency and and the desire for more edge compute. I think one of the other things that we're hearing from people is a concern about sovereignty and the data sovereignty, particularly in video applications where they might be capturing their customers or their employees and wanting to make sure that, hey, we want to keep that stuff on site. We got to make sure it doesn't get sent away somewhere else.
All right.
So are you discovering anything more along those lines? Are you hearing the same thing, maybe, is the way to say?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, sovereignty is carrying a kind of a political meaning nowadays.
Yes.
I would talk about data privacy when it comes to enterprises.
Sure.
Enterprise wants security or data privacy, where they want to control the data.
Exactly.
They don't want the data to leave the four walls of their building.
Yes.
And they need wireless. I mean, they have these robots moving around. It has to be wireless. So they have to give up that sort of control of the data and let it fly through the air. But as far as where the edge processing is done, they want that done on site. They want to control the radio parameters and the security of the radio on site. And so, that's very much in the realm of private 5G. And I think that's going very well.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for stopping by. We appreciate your insights.
Okay. Thank you.